Alright, so we are all going to need to put on our thinking caps for this very intense topic that we're going to be discussing today. And this is going to be a very, very heavily nuanced topic that I'm going to attempt to squeeze into this hopefully 20-minute video. It's also going to be a two-parter. And please feel free, if you have any sort of questions, any comments, statements at all, please do leave it in the comment section, as it may definitely help you and at best help someone else in the process. I will definitely do my diligence in answering any questions as I possibly can, and if it's a really big question, I'll have a video for it. Today we're going to be discussing abuse, and it's going to be a two-parter because we're going to be also discussing self-esteem. Now, what I'm going to do here is, in the process, I'm going to be showing everyone, and please, no one take this the wrong way, because some of us genuinely just simply don't know how to do this, but I'm going to be showing us how to think about things. And I'm also going to be going into the facets of cognitive therapy quite a lot. Alright, so what I'm going to say, I'm writing down here so that I can have two sources to allow my eyes to deviate towards. I recommend you guys write this down as well. This is my active definition of abuse and what it is. So, abuse is any form of behavior that causes harm to another person, physically, emotionally, sexually, or psychologically. So, I referred to how to think about things a little bit earlier. When you have a big problem, I always recommend, especially if it has a specific word that you have for it, like if you know that you struggle with abuse, for example, or with patience, or you know that you need more wisdom, or that you are a victim of self-hatred, go back to the source of these problems, because we know that problems are a very universal thing in regards to the humanities, and likely people have solved it before you, and you don't have to be alone in that regard trying to solve this malignant problem by your own means, because nobody really does that. So, like abuse, define abuse. Preferably, as a thinking exercise, try to make your own definition and see if it's in alignment with abuse, because maybe your problem isn't abuse, and it's something totally different, but you're just conflating it with abuse. So abuse, any behavior, and by the way, because some don't know, a behavior is an action that is learned from another source or persons. Now, okay, so any behavior that causes harm to another person physically, emotionally, sexually, or psychologically. Now, abuse, when I first, like I said, make your own definition and then look at the actual definition and see if there's any alignment. Every time I think about abuse, I think about violence. Now, it's a little vague, right? But abuse is also quite vague as well. You can get very, very specific with it, which is why I understand that this is going to be a very nuanced topic. But with abuse, it's also like if you've suffered in the past tense through abuse, and we have to look at moving forward. I know that this is a question that has come to my attention It's a very important one that I'm sure that a lot of people can relate to. And I'm going to come back to it at the end of the video with my answer. How do you experience the Most High's joy despite abuse? Okay. Now, this is going to sound harsh, a little bit harsh, but I believe that it's true. It's a little bit ambitious, if you will, to go for the Most High's joy without acknowledging the type of abuse that you've suffered. In my opinion, you need to heal from that with the Most High's help, and that will subsequently lead you to joy. So, without going into all the facets of abuse, I'm going to do my best to make this video mainly about the healing process of abuse and what those outlets look like. So, the very first thing, like any sort of wound or pain or any sort of suffering that can be inflicted upon a person, you need to validate within yourself that it exists. That subsequently comes along with acceptance. So if you know that you were abused in any sort of way, acknowledging that you were abused is a very good start after you come to terms with the definition. So, self-validation. And then what that leads to is that it happened for a reason, which I'm starting to learn is a very cliche thing to say, as some people who are religious or spiritual may come to terms with the idea that there is no such thing as as coincidence. And I tend to believe this as in myself because I believe in the Most High, and I believe that He governs pretty much everything. He governs everything that happens on the earth. And since He governs everything that happens on the earth, not to be conflated with totalitarianism, it's very hard for me to think that anything happens for literally no reason at all. And that's good, and, you know, it has its pros and its cons. This is one of the cons that's kind of enlaced with the goods as far as abuse is concerned. Because someone may think, wow, so my God made sure that I was abused for a reason? That seems pretty malevolent for such a benevolent God, right? And that makes me question the Most High. And then that can make it more difficult for that person to come to terms with the Most High's joy, and especially in regards to the healing process spiritually. So, that all being said, it did indeed happen for a reason, at least based off of my opinion. Now, the reason it happened, and I'm going to get into more depth with this in the next video on self-esteem, the reason it happened is to synchronize itself within your purpose, within the type of person that you are built to be by the Most High. So if we look at a diamond, we know that a diamond requires a certain amount of pressure. High pressure, mind you. Not the type of pressure that you would put on gold, for example, but pressure nonetheless. But there is a vast difference between diamonds and gold, right? And so, what category do you fit in? What kind of suffering do you go through? Because we all go through some sort of suffering, some higher than others. And that's another thing that you have to come to terms with, which is, if you've gone through a lot, the chances are that the Most High made you to go through a lot, because the Most High doesn't put on us what we can't bear. Now, what comes with that is you might not want to be strong, which is totally fine, except it kind of isn't, because strength is a very big gift that the Most High gives you. But it's also a very real thing to not want to be strong, because no one wants to go through suffering all the time. But I'm going to make a video in the future on what it is to suffer beautifully. And when you suffer beautifully, I've already talked about how you can affect other people in your life just focusing on your own character development. And there's no really good character development without some sort of turmoil that you have to go through, rather internally or otherwise. Abuse is a good way to start. So, physically, emotionally, sexually, and psychologically. So, with this being said, there are three outlets of which you can inspire your healing process. Now, some of these can interchange, as a lot of abuse in one end can indeed leak into the other. But there is a mind, there is spirit, and there is body. And of course, there is a whole bunch of subcategories and subdivisions that break up into those three facets, or tenets. Now, emotionally and psychologically, that will reside in the mind. That also can bleed into the soul or spirit. I believe it's the soul. Because the original definition of psychology was the study of the human soul. So, and of course, the mind is where you harvest, emotion and thought, all sorts of cognitive ability. So, the mind. The spirit, this is a lot more, in my opinion, difficult to heal from. This is your pride, your ego, in some sense, your superego, your spirit, your relationship with the Most High, that is to say, your faith, the amount of humility that you have, things of that nature, wisdom. I really like to think of faith for spirit, because I know that it's very easy to become an atheist after you've experienced a certain amount of abuse, once you've learned that there's supposed to be a Most High who's supposed to protect you from all things. And then, of course, body. That is, of course, the physicality of it all. But you see, a strong body makes a strong mind. So these things all intertwine within each other. So, understanding that, the homework is, what type of abuse have you gone through? And what category does it fall under? Because, this can't unfortunately be such a specific, cognitive therapy session as I would love to have with whoever needs it, because I only have the camera in front of me. But what category would your abuse fall under? Now, if you've suffered a lot of abuse, you're probably going to say all of them, in which case you're going to have to go through all of them in regards to the healing process. Healing of the mind. So what does that look like? Well, it depends on the type of abuse. If you were told that you were stupid all of your life, you were told that you were, if you were just told that you, or your abusers made you feel that you lacked mental capability, then perhaps the healing process is going to look like building competence in that arena. Perhaps that's not your struggle. Perhaps it's something pretty different in regards to mentality. Maybe, and by the way, of course, everything starts in the mind. So pretty much any of these is going to, you're going to have to start there. But perhaps it's your body. Maybe you were body shamed heavily coming up. Maybe that starts like getting on an exercise regimen, so that way you can start feeling better about being in your own skin. your spirituality, maybe you don't have a good relationship with the Most High. Perhaps you start taking your Sabbaths more seriously, or perhaps you start reading a scripture or two once a day, starting small, of course. But the thing is, you need to know exactly what was done to you. I suggest probably writing it down. This can be an emotional experience, writing it down, because you're going to literally see everything that's happened to you on that piece of paper. But then begin to apply introspection about what you see there. What exactly happened, and how did that shape your character? And did it shape your character in a good way or a bad way? Because our mediums of suffering can turn us into good individuals, or it could turn us into Machiavellian individuals. Which one are you? And if you're on the more psychological dark triad front, perhaps you can fix that. Right, so writing down what exactly happened to you, what that means for your personality and for your life. So, going back to the question, go ahead and wrap it up here. How do you experience the Most High's joy despite abuse? So, as I stated earlier, it's going to be difficult to get to the Most High's joy without healing from the process of abuse. So I suggest go on a fast to get the Most High's attention, and fast specifically for the healing process of your abuse. So that way you can heal from the pain and heal from the sorrow first. And then once you're healed, you're going to have to, I suggest, asking and very diligently seeking what the Most High's purpose is for you. Not your own purpose, what the Most High's purpose is for you. They may be the same thing, right? But specifically His purpose for you, because His purpose for you is going to lead you into this sort of quest or adventure where you get to fulfill something within you that's really, really deep. And once you are at least even in the process of fulfilling that with some sort of competence, I promise you, you'll start to feel better about literally everything within your life. There's this book, I forget the title of the book, but what the story it tells, it's a fiction about humans creating robots, and these robots developing a certain amount of consciousness, and without this turning into an iRobot or a situation where the robots become malevolent and want to take over the human society by force, they actually do the opposite. They actually call for separation in the Malcolm X sense very much. And when these robots make this pact with the humans, they go on this quest far, far away to where the humans believe that the robots are possibly dead. Now in the story, the humans, I believe that the human society turns dystopian, and we're following this protagonist, this boy, I believe, who is just lost, and he's just on this senseless adventure, just wandering, and he eventually comes across this robot who asks him this very, very ambiguous question. What do humans need? So, this is a question coming from a conscious robot, because, as you may know, robots don't need food, They don't need water. You know, they don't have emotion in the original sense of which humans have the capability of. They don't need anything. And so, the beauty, and I'll get to the point of this in a minute, the beauty about the robot in this story is it's perhaps, and this is going to sound like an oxymoron, a paradox at best, but the robot exhibits a very beautiful sense of nihilism, one that I've never seen before. But anyways, the question was, what do humans need? The character, the main protagonist that we follow, whom the robot asked the question to, never answers that question. But I began to try to answer that question, because what the character did say was that that's not a question that you just ask people, right? Because no one can really give you a right answer, but I think I have a pretty solid jab at it. I believe that humans need to feel purpose. At our core, that's what I think we want and need. Not necessarily purpose, but to feel like we have a purpose. Because as humans, we've always been looking for meaning. And our minds are so good at detecting patterns that we can often find meaning in two completely different territories and sort of mesh them together and say, here's a connection, and that has some sort of meaning that relates back to God or me, right? And so with that, as Israelites, we know that we have the Most High. And I don't think that Israel is exempt from that sort of need, which is to feel purpose. Because with that, you feel a sense of pride, a sense of importance, a sense of responsibility, something to step up to. And so, with that being said, when you're fulfilling or in the process of fulfilling your purpose, you feel like you're accomplishing the very root of your existence, which is, you could argue, essentially what you're doing. And so with that being said, what you need to do, however, is find out what the most highest purpose is for you, so that way you know that you are pushing your life forward in the right direction. So more on purpose and the likes of that in the next video. But I hope that this video, sincerely, I hope this video helps in some sort of way, in some degree, to any sort of person out there. So remember, the homework is to analyze exactly what happened to you as much as you can, as vividly as you can imagine. Realize the abuse and realize what categories of healing does it fall into: mind, spirit, body, or all of them, which it's likely going to be into all of them, but there's going to be a main source there. Mind, spirit, or body. Look at how that affected your life and your personality and see what you can grow into. If you've watched my last video, Transformation, you might be thinking, well, I have this archetype now because I did my homework, and now I know exactly what I want to be like in the future. And now, after I do this homework that I'm going to do right now, I'm going to know exactly, or perhaps have an even better picture of where I am, because I'm going to understand why I'm there. And so, once you understand the why, you can start to understand the how. How can I get to exactly where I want to be? And perhaps your why alters exactly where you want to be and why you want to be there. Right? So I recommend do the homework. It's going to be gruesome, I know, But I think that it will help, and I hope that the next lesson, the part 2 of this lesson, helps a plethora of individuals as well. And again, if anyone has any questions, comments, concerns, or even video recommendations, please leave them in the comment section. And share this video to individuals that you think need it. So, with that, hope everybody stay safe, stay dangerous, and be wise. Shalom.